Hello and a warm welcome to everyone to Pack Talks with VJCV. Today I am sitting in one of the alpaca farms in Midlands, sitting with Paul MacDonnell. He has built this business in the last 16 years, right from ground up, starting with 3 alpacas, now helping and walking around with almost 60 alpacas and setting up a base and proper structure for alpaca farming in and around Ireland. Now, as per Paul, there are around 3,500 alpacas in Ireland and slowly and steadily growing. So we will listen from Paul in terms of what has been the journey, what was he doing before this, and how has been the life with alpacas and his family around that. Welcome, Paul, to Pack Talks.
Thank you.
First of all, it's great to see somebody who has followed a journey like this in terms of a very different journey. We have read about people who would have taken up farming, but it's very traditional farming and things like that. This is something entirely different in terms of the herd that you have picked up, alpacas. So before we talk about alpacas, can you help us in terms of understanding what you were doing before this and why you entered into this?
So originally I come from Ballygar in County Galway, and my father would have had a traditional beef farm back there. So I was very familiar with the farming as an enterprise. We also had a farm machinery and hardware business, so I would have dealt in my younger years growing up in Ballygar with all the local farmers who were coming in buying bits and pieces and buying small machinery and second-hand machinery and that kind of thing. So I had a good handle on what old style traditional farming looked like. I always had an interest in animals as well. Your typical National Geographic and David Attenborough and all this kind of stuff, which I really like and follow and still do. So I always had a grow for animals, and in particular maybe some of the more unusual species. When I moved to the Midlands, work brought me here, and I worked in construction, still do a bit of that, and we decided that we'd build a house here in Killy, which is just on the Laois-Offaly border. And in doing that, I was left with a very small paddock at the back of the house, which I wanted to graze some animals on. And I didn't want to go down the route of the traditional cattle and sheep and that kind of thing. So I've done a bit of homework and ended up with 3 alpacas. And as they say, that's where it all started.
Great. So just for the better understanding for the listeners, so the whole thing happened in 2010, when you decided that, okay, now let me get the alpacas and get going. So can you just give us a glimpse of how it was during that time?
So I guess at the time it was just really to express an interest in them as a breed, and maybe with a view to finding out a little bit more about them. I had no intention when I bought my first 3 alpacas of doing anything further. It was purely a little pet project, and I intended to keep them as pets. And as is typical across the alpaca community, it's well known that once you dip your toe into the alpaca world, it does tend to take over, and that's exactly what happened in this instance. So as luck would have it, over the years I've managed to acquire some acres, some fields adjacent to my own house, and that allowed me then to look at the idea of expanding the herd. So I set about then establishing a real high-end sort of breeding program here. So I've done a bit of homework, sourced some really good quality stock, mostly from the UK, and started breeding then around 2012.
Awesome. I'll take one step back again because I am curious. I think many of the listeners will also be curious. How did you end up thinking that, okay, alpaca is the one that I should go ahead with?
Again, it was just a bit of a flight of fancy, really. I wanted something a little bit unusual, not mainstream. I also didn't have any land at the time to work with, so I knew, or only a small parcel of land, so I knew I had to work with animals that I could cater for in that instance. Alpacas just seem to tick all the boxes. They're easy on the land. You can stock them quite intensively. They're very gentle. They're uniquely individual in terms of personalities, and I guess we farmed them for their fleece. Essentially, that's what they're bred for. So we didn't have to get into the whole industry of farming animals for meat, for example, or So essentially they just ticked all the boxes, and that's how it started.
Great. So before we talk about the business involved in this, I just want to understand a little bit more about alpaca, their lifespan, in terms of their behavior, and how easy it is to manage them.
Yeah, so alpacas have been bred and domesticated across the world. In South America, they were domesticated a couple of thousand years ago. So they were bred by the Incas, and they were bred entirely for their wool. And to this day, they're still bred entirely for their wool. So they've never been farmed for their meat. The wool was traditionally known as the fibre of the gods. It was something that determined a person's wealth, depending on how many alpacas they had and that kind of stuff. So they were kind of always known as a sort of a high value animal in that regard. And the fact that they live until maybe they're 20, 25 years of age, they can produce quite a lot of fleece. And to this day, that fleece is valuable, when you compare it with the likes of sheep's wool. So it's a case of utilising it, finding a use for it, and adding value to it. And then that's essentially what we do. The alpacas themselves are uniquely individual, as I said, in terms of their characteristics, their personalities. They come in a variety of different colours, 16 different natural colours, which means that you can use the wool in a variety of ways without having to dye it. The fleece itself is hyperallergenic, so it's great for bedding, etc., for children with allergies and all that. So we make a lot of cot blankets, duvets, pillows, that kind of thing. It's 10 times warmer than sheep's wool, so it's an extremely good insulator. And it's something you can wear against the skin, so for high fashion items like pashminas and suits, etc., you can wear it against the skin. It doesn't have any of that prickle factor that lamb's wool would have. So it's a particularly good product, and something that you can add a lot of value to. So I suppose when I got my first alpacas, I didn't really intend to go down the road I've gone down. I seem to be led down that road. I kind of say the alpacas have led me that way. And I've branched out into loads of different things in terms of what I do here, but it's all alpaca related. So I consider it like Hushabye farm is sort of like the cogs of a wheel, or the spokes of a wheel, and that at the centre it's all alpacas, but then I've branched into different areas like accommodation, workshops, selling product, doing stud services, doing shows, different things like that. All alpaca related, so all centred around the animal itself, but it's very much a lifestyle, and it's a passion of mine, and it's been a nice journey so far.
Amazing. So when you started off in 2010, in terms of you started off with 3 alpacas, as you mentioned. Any business you start, you need money coming into that to be up and running. So how much did you spend initially, and was it all from your pocket? It was bootstrapped, or did you get support from somebody? And how has been over the years, last 16 years? Is it still a bootstrap journey, or you have taken investment, or how has it been?
Well, I'm very keen on one notion, which was taught to me by my father a long time ago, and it's, if you're going to spend anyone's money, spend your own, don't spend anyone else's. So in other words, borrowing money for me was never going to be a runner, because straight away it would have put me under huge pressure to repay loans and all of that kind of, the pressure that goes with taking money from somebody else. So if you don't have it to spend, then you don't spend it. So initially I would have spent somewhere in the region of 15,000 on my initial stock, which is three females, and from there I just grew it gradually over the years. So I grew the herd gradually, I expanded the farm gradually, I done the accommodations gradually. So everything I done, I went through a year, gathered up a few bob, enough to maybe progress something the following year, and then kept moving that way. So that at no point did I put myself under pressure, and certainly under financial pressure, because it would have taken the enjoyment out of this whole project if I had done that. So little by little I managed to grow the herd by importing some extra breeding females, some different stud males. I was lucky enough, as I said, to acquire acres all around the house. I bought land off 6 different people, which in Ireland is a very rare thing, and especially 6 different people adjacent to your own house. That's unheard of. So I was very, very lucky. There were little parcels of land that weren't kind of any good to anyone else, but they were perfect for me, and it knitted together what is now Hushabye Farm. I tell people I have a huge farm because it straddles 2 counties, Offaly and Laois, but it's not that big at all. It stands at somewhere in the region of 30 acres. So, but it's plenty for what I want to do, and it's allowed me to, I suppose, diversify into the various spokes of that wheel I was telling you about. So, we had a couple of old derelict properties on the farm that I managed to do up. Again, I waited till I gathered some money together, and then I done them up one by one, and I'm continuously, trying to improve them in that regard. This year's experiment is the glamping tents, which I've put up but not released. I just want to experiment with them and see how they work, and I have to put up, like a shower unit and toilets and all that kind of stuff out here. But we'll see if there's any potential for that. So from the financial point of view is that it's very much self-financed and is still self-financing, and because of that lends itself to the lifestyle that it is for me.
Awesome. And when I read through the internet and look up for Paul MacDonnell, you come out as someone who is now the lead face for Alpacas in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So have you traveled outside Ireland, say to South America or somewhere, to understand more about alpacas, or somewhere else to just learn about them, or how did you learn more about them?
So I suppose initially I kind of threw myself in at the deep end. Animals being animals, like if you have a love for wildlife and for animals in general, there's quite a lot of common ground in relation to husbandry. So I knew I was safe enough in the initial stages, but as the herd got bigger, I figured I needed to specialise or hone those skills. And the way to do that is to visit established alpaca farms. And I certainly done plenty of that, travelled a lot and met some, like-minded individuals, and was very lucky to gain from their experience, and then take that experience home and practice it here over the last few years. And every day is a school day with alpacas. You never know it all. The day you think you know it all is never going to happen. But I'm certainly a lot further down the road in terms of their husbandry as to when I started. And there's a lovely community out there of alpaca owners and breeders and that, who are very supportive and helpful, and we have a nice amount of communication, etc., across the world really at this stage, and sharing ideas and skills and knowledge and experience. So attending workshops and attending various courses, etc., husbandry courses, veterinary courses. I done a multitude of those, and still do, and host them here as well. So I people who are setting out on their alpaca journey now, it's nice to be in a position that you have a certain amount of experience that you can share with those. So when I had got my alpacas initially back 16 years ago, there wasn't really anyone in Ireland that you could liaise with. Certainly there wasn't many, and at this point there are plenty, of people and breeders across the country who are quite happy to support people setting out on their alpaca journey, if it's only buying a couple of pets just to have for the kids in the back garden, or if it's for people who want to maybe set up something by way of an alpaca business. In Ireland there's loads of support there now, including myself.
Amazing. So I'll just add to that in terms of so now there is, if I understand correctly, you have helped putting up together an Alpaca Association for Ireland. Mm-hmm. And in that association, how many members do you have? And does people come to you saying that, okay, now I want to be a member and I want to also get into business, something like that?
So the Alpaca Association was set up about 20 years ago. Currently I think there's in a region of 120 members. Some of them would be small breeders who are rather owners who might only have 3 or 4 pet alpacas, but they have an interest in the breed, they have an interest in going to shows, maybe doing courses, that kind of stuff. Other people then would have maybe established a small herd, so they might have 10, 15, 20 alpacas, and they in turn need the support of an association. So the association runs various workshops and shows, etc., and is great for supporting people who, because essentially, like any farming enterprise, once you're outside of a group, you're essentially on your own. Farming can be a kind of a lonesome business, and you do need the support group behind you for a variety of reasons, including the likes of veterinary experience, for example, workshops, all that kind of stuff. And they host national shows where people actually bring their alpacas and show them, etc. So it's the body that essentially that knits the whole community together.
Awesome. So I love also in terms of talk about your family, okay, and because the way when I spoke to you and I understood, I was just calculating and I figured out that your kids and alpacas would have grown together, because when you have got your first set of alpacas, your elder daughter would have been 4 or 5 years old, and then she has grown and she's now 20. So how has that been journey in terms of growing your kids and alpacas together, and how big a role has your wife Liz played in terms of making sure that you are moving in the right direction always?
Yeah, well, the kids have known nothing else because they've always had alpacas around. So obviously, Charlotte, where you're correct, was probably around 3 or 4 when the first alpacas came, and then the rest of the kids. So Emily, who's now 18, and Maddie 16, and Noah is 15. They've never known any difference. So they do take it kind of for granted in a way. Like they just, I suppose, have never experienced it in any other way. So. But you know, as they've grown up, they've come with me to shows. They've done a lot of workshops and helping out here on the farm. They do lots of work with the accommodations, etc. And we have to change over and between guests and things like that, and taking guests for walks with the alpacas. And yeah, like with any kids going through their teenage years, etc. There are days when they're keener than other days, etc. Depending how busy they are. They have a very hectic social scene, and they're busy with sports and school and friends and things like that. So as they get older, life changes and their circumstances and their daily routine, etc. changes. And but they've always been a great help and great support. And I'd like to think that it's the Hushabye farm experience has imprinted in them some love of animals in general and love of the country life and the lifestyle that they offer. From time to time, they're great to help, and they're always on hand. And obviously they're busy now with Charlotte's in college, and Emily's going to go to college this year, and the other two are coming through their secondary school journey. So they're busy, but they're a great help, and they're enthusiastic. And I'd like to think that at some point when they reflect on their childhood growing up amongst the alpacas and Hushabye farm and having the cottages and all the guests that come here from all over the world, that they'll reflect on that as a privilege and a nice childhood to look back on. That's it. If that happens, then that'll be rewarding enough.
Amazing. And now we'll talk about the farm and the name for the farm. And I felt when I understood it was unique, and you got from one of the shows. And then you were talking about the naming of the alpacas also. So if you can just give a glimpse.
So I suppose, as I said, the alpacas are uniquely individual in terms of their personalities and their characteristics. So it's nice for them to have individual names. And people ask me, how do you remember all their names? And it's like having a classroom full of kids. If you're the teacher, you'll remember 40, 50, 60 names because you're working with the kids all day, every day. And I'm working with the alpacas all day, every day. So I know them individually. I know them not only to look at, but also in terms of the cheeky one and the bossy one and the shy one and the bully and all that kind of stuff. And we like giving them names, and usually quite quirky names and something to remember them by. We also give guests the opportunity to maybe name some of the cria when they're born if they're here during the time, etc. The name Hushabye Farm comes from a song on a favourite film of the kids growing up, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. There was a song on that called Hushabye Mountain, which is a beautiful song, and that's where the name Hushabye Farm came from. And then we have Lullaby Lodge, which is one of our cottages, and then quite a few of the alpacas are named after characters in that particular film, but names also from different films, different songs, lyrics to songs, bands, all that kind of thing. And we have a bit of fun with the names. We started when we got into numbers some years back, naming all the animals born in a particular year with a name beginning with a particular letter. So and we follow that alphabetically. So So this, like we'd have all the crea born in 1 year named with the letter M, following year it's N, O, P, that kind of thing. So yeah, it gives us a bit of fun. So crea is born, and we might have a committee meeting and come up with a nice name. It could be something to do with the weather, like Hurricane there was born in a storm. Gargamel was named after one of the Smurfs, I think, or one of the kids were watching the Smurfs at the time, or I don't know. There's a gazillion reasons where they come up with their names, but it's a bit of fun, and they keep their names. They don't know their names, the alpacas, but we registered them with the Alpaca Association, so it goes on as their official certified name.
Awesome, great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a small rapid fire with you before we wind up with this. Okay. So so that people who want to reach out to you and understand and get to come here, it will be easy for them. So when do you do your workshops in a year?
So they vary from depending on the time of year. We don't host any of them typically during the summer because everyone's too busy with crea births, shearing, shows, all that kind of stuff. So they tend to be autumn and winter when the evenings are shorter. There isn't so much work going on outside, and I usually take in small groups. It could be 6, 8, maybe 10 of people with an interest in maybe buying some alpacas themselves. So when we sell the alpacas, we don't just like literally load them up in a trailer and let them off down the road. We make sure that whoever's buying them knows what they're going to do with them when they get them. So we give them the basic husbandry skills that allow them to, when they go home, establish their herd and with some degree of confidence know that they're looking after their animals correctly. And then we're always there thereafter if they need any kind of support, be it over the phone or in person, etc. We also do with Trish Kerr from Irish Alpaca Yarns. We do our spinning workshops here, and they're very popular. We have quite a core group of ladies who come to Hushabye Farm for the knitting and for the chat and the cups of tea, and to take away some beautiful fleeces with them, and maybe do some spinning when they're on their own. We do some felting workshops with Sandra, and we should have one currently now coming up soon, I think in September, making alpaca felt slippers, and that's a nice workshop that'll go on over a weekend. The date is sort of yet to be determined. So, and then for the accommodations, people usually book those through Airbnb or off our own website, which is Hushabye Farm Alpacas.
And how many people can be accommodated at a single point in time in all your Airbnbs put together? Well,
we have the Jack Wright's cottage, which we're sitting beside here, overlooking the Slieve Bloom Mountains. They're small. We typically 3 or 4 people is plenty in those. We tend to get a lot of couples, or we get families, small families, etc. Kids love it because they can interact with the alpacas and they're safe, run around the fields there. We've no TV, we've no Wi-Fi. So it's our unique selling point, that's what you call it. But it's really to encourage people just put away the phones, relax, chat, play some board games, run through the fields. The other cottage, Lullaby Lodge, is down in the alpaca yard itself, and that has 2 double rooms in it and a sofa bed. So typically 4 or 5 people will go in there. The glamping tents, as I said, is a work in progress. So we'll see what happens with that next summer.
Awesome. And going back to the alpacas, what do they like to eat?
So they're very easy to maintain in that regard. Bear in mind, we're in terms of their diet, we're not trying to fatten them up, or we're not sending them to a market or anything like that. So their diet is purely maintenance. They do eat a lot of roughage. They like picking through the hedges and off the leaves off the tree. They obviously graze the grass, and we give them hay, supplementary hay, and also some supplementary feed stuff as well, which is specifically for camelids, which we buy from our suppliers, and we give them that daily. And then they obviously have fresh water, and truthfully they just live out an absolutely idyllic existence in the Midlands here in lush green fields overlooking the Slieve Blooms, and they're very, very happy.
And if people want to reach out to Paul MacDonnell, what's the easiest way to reach out to you, and what you do when you are not being with the alpacas?
Well, I still do my construction side of things. I'm working in the construction business, so that keeps me busy. So the alpacas is very much the sort of the lifestyle that I enjoy, and it's a beautiful pastime to be at as well as everything else. You can check us out on Hushabye Farm Alpacas. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and all the usual socials.
Okay. One last question before we wind up the great chat that we had. There is a lot of talk about technology and all businesses getting either supported by or like technology is being part of that. Is there any time that you have thought that you want to use any of the technology to manage the alpacas or the farm or something like that at any point in time?
I honestly can't see where technology would be of any benefit to me in that regard. I don't dismiss technology or any new ideas just for the sake of it, but I do know that like for example the accommodations, as I mentioned, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no TV, there's no technology at all, and people seem to like that. I certainly do. I know other people who have accommodation businesses tell me that they can't get bookings unless they've got the best broadband, the best Wi-Fi, the biggest TV, and I'm thinking, I have never had anybody stay here who hasn't commented on the fact that, in a positive way, they haven't commented on the fact that there's no TV and no Wi-Fi. They absolutely love it. And sometimes, we need to force each other to maybe just give the technology a bit of a break and give our heads a bit of space. And what I'm trying to do here is, we're looking across the Slieve Bloom Mountains here, and there's no technology in the world that can recreate that. And it's a pretty nice space, lots of fresh air. It's beautiful any time of the year. And for me, there's no amount of AI or Netflix can compensate for the joy that this place brings to me.
Amazing. It was pleasure talking to you, Paul, and I hope this keeps growing and you are one of the lead faces for alpacas in Ireland, and I hope your work gets known by more people across the globe, and hopefully you become 100 alpaca or 1,000 alpaca farm slowly. But I understand you correctly that you want to take it very slowly. You enjoy your life around that, and you want it to pace it in that manner, and you don't want to look at it as a business. You look at it as a thing that you would like to do when you get up in the morning and you just walk around and you want to do that. So exactly. I hope you keep doing that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's one thing I never ever considered what I'm doing here as a business at all. And some people scratch their head at that, but for me, as soon as I put myself under pressure for something like this to perform, I don't think it will, because it's a passion of mine, and it's something I love doing, and I love sharing with people. I love having guests coming and watching them interact with the alpacas, but I also love getting people started with their own alpaca journey and being there for to support them throughout that. And that to me is probably one of the biggest rewards of having learned all I've learned about alpacas and getting into breeding them. And they've brought nothing but joy, really. Lots of ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't have traded my alpaca journey for anything.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for being on the show.